Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 76 of my South Olympic Branch Update series. Got out of the house today, went up to Stevens Pass, and all I'm seeing is maintenance away stuff so far. But that's the way it goes sometimes. I still enjoy getting outdoors and, enjoying the fresh air. As BNSF 5426 cruises by us with a eastbound rack and stack at west of Bering, I wanted to note that right in a few seconds here my camera battery is going to die. So I ran ahead and got it again. I wanted to focus on the engine that's right behind the lead for a moment, as BNSF 659 has not been patched. I've been tempted to put a crossing bell on the crossing on the South Olympic Branch, but when I stand next to a real crossing, I think, maybe not. This was taken at the east end of the town of Skykomish, Washington. At the rear of the train, BNSF 4314 and 978 are pushing hard. If all goes well, this train will make it through the Cascade Tunnel past Leavenworth and on to Wenatchee before the crew will disembark and another crew will take the train to Spokane. At the Boeing Employees Model Railroad Club, there was a Run What You Brung day, so I brought my version of the Empire Builder as a rainbow train. The Boeing Employees Model Railroad Club has their own railroad called the Seattle and North Cascades. It basically is a fictionalized line that would have run between Seattle and Wenatchee, but instead of following Stevens Pass, would follow closer to what is called Highway 20. Skipping ahead past some of the other towns on the layout, my train is now passing their model of Lake Diablo. Lake Diablo is a man-made lake in the North Cascades that has a big power generating dam on it. The backdrops on the model railroad are comprised of a bunch of pictures that were taken by Bill Kedzik and were photoshopped by Bill and by Byron Osborne. Those guys together worked to create these beautiful panoramic backdrops for the layout.
Get some blue tape and put it on there. Fix it tomorrow.
The railroad is kind of a mushroom style layout, and at Wenatchee the train is basically turned and can head back down grade. So I was creating a lap joint and gluing my backdrops together, but I thought, what if I have to take these down and move things around? I mean, what if that happens? That means I'm going to have to cut that lap joint. I don't like that. I was using plumber's glue, or what you call plumber's glue. This stuff, clear, ote, or whatever, you know, however they pronounce it. I had this idea, and I've tried it. And up here, you can see, I actually did it on this one. You can't see the results of it. That's part of the point, right? But what I did was I took a piece of plastic styrene-like material that's, probably somewhere between 030 and 040. And then I bought some strips of Velcro off the Big Evil A. Everybody knows those, Amazon. And these are 4 by 1 inch, and they've got their adhesive backed, and I attached 2 strips of this to the back of one of these pieces, and then it's, like I said, it's adhesive backed, so I just stuck it between the 2 sections of backdrop. And so if I have to take that apart, I could. And I actually I'm excited now because this is a much better solution for me than gluing them together. For one thing, that glue stinks to high heaven. I have to glue and then set it up, wear my respirator, and leave the train room after that. But anyway, so I'll show a little bit more about that when I go to do the next set. I do want to leave that seam alone for now because I just put those pieces on there, and if I try to separate it right now, it'll probably just rip the adhesive from the back of the strips, because I had that experience before. So this stuff, it just has a heavy duty, stickiness to it, and I'm trying to do this while I'm holding the camera, which is probably not the best way. You can see it's really sticky, right? So take that piece off, and then I'm just flipping it around and, sticking it to the edge of this stuff. And I sized these pieces out when I cut them so they could hold two strips side by side. So then they'll go, whoops, I'm dropping it. Then it'll just, like I said, it'll just go across the gap. I think that'll work well. I'm back at the Boeing Club again, this time for the monthly Friday night operating session. And here I'm running a Great Northern grain train from Seattle to Wenatchee.
I'll let you get that if you don't mind.
Here the train is passing through their version of Delta Yard in Everett, Washington. So one of the things I've been tinkering with lately is this module. and I got one that's the reverse of it. These are going to be Fremo style. So the end at this end is 26 inches and the end of the other end is 30. Now the reason I did that was so that I could take advantage of the depth of my module rack, but also because my 4DHO modules are 30 inches. But also I wanted something that was a little more interesting than just a rectangle. It is challenging though, for me anyway, cutting angles like that. But I did manage to get some of the stuff done the way I wanted it. And I'm gonna put a ditch in the top here, which will have like some, pipes so the water can run through underneath the tracks. And I'm gonna patch in some more plywood on this side to be able to fill in the top. And I might run the ditch right across, or I might put like a 90-degree angle in it and run it down to the end of the module. Another member of the group, whose name is Russell, came over and helped me cut out some plywood for the modules. Here we're starting to assemble it. Russell and I spent quite a bit of time standing around talking about the angle that we might want and drawing it out on a piece of plywood. Once we decided on 15 degrees, we went forward to the next step. I braced the angle by putting one of the cross braces right at the end of the straight board and then laminated another piece of plywood in the joint there. I decided to add a couple of Simpson strong tie metal brackets to the middle brace in the module there. And then I started adding risers to make sure there was enough support for the top. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the open part on the left, but I've now decided I'm going to fill it in with plywood. So I've been working on building the entrance, or the line that goes to the upper helix a little bit. And originally I had this idea where I was just going to have it come over here and angle up into there. But now I've decided that I'm actually going to run it over here a little bit more and then go up that way, kind of like it does on the bottom. And part of the thing there is I'm going to put a creek scene right here. This black stuff is gator board. This is about a ½ inch thick, and I don't have any idea where it really came from. It was given to me by some stuff that was left over from another modeler in the NMRA local chapter. And I'm going to attach this in here. I think it'll probably be glued in there. And then I'll probably use some plaster cloth, maybe some foam to fill in around what will be the creek here. And the single track bridge over here, which is actually broken, I just need to re-glue that thing back together, will go over here and eventually fill that scene out. So a couple of different things I've had to do to make this work, and I thought I'd filmed this earlier, but apparently I didn't, so I'll kind of retract or back up here a little bit. I cut this piece of 3/4 inch, and usually on the front fascia I go with half, but since this is kind of needing a little more support this way, I decided to go 3/4. And then I took my jigsaw, cut it down, and sanded this out a little bit so that I could have the width, the overall width. Now, since this is modeling summer, the creek is only really going to be, I think, about that wide. And I'm going to have all sorts of vegetation around here. And this piece over here, this piece of scrap that I had, and I put in a couple of chunks on the wall there to help support it. I also did I also put in a couple of braces down here, these vertical pieces you see, to hold up the pieces underneath. And I figured out how to make those. I mean, it wasn't really that much of a feat of engineering, but I figured out how to make these do double duty and support the creek bed here, which I did with a couple of pieces of wood that I had laying around. So that's mostly what I've been working on the layout recently. I sort of got derailed because it's summer, and I've been using a lot of my off time to go outside, since we're fortunate enough here in the Pacific Northwest not to have been completely inundated by wood smoke like we have in past years. I got outside a lot, but it's kind of overcast and actually even a little bit raining, which is weird for August, but that's what it's doing right now. It's like 77 degrees and occasionally sprinkling out there. So I've done some screwing, got this thing screwed in place in a couple of locations here. And then I did a little experiment where I glued in a couple of small pieces of scrap plywood, and got those to act as sort of a ledger for this piece of gator board to go in there. And so then, once that's solid in place, I need to do something with it on the backside. I think I might just wood glue that up there and see if it stays. We'll see what happens with that. Again, like I said, I'm new to using this stuff, so don't know how exactly it's going to work. Okay, so I can finally take the clamp off of that. Now that I put a screw in here and a screw in there, it's not going anywhere. I put a couple of braces, as I said earlier, from the front to these braces in the back. Still haven't screwed that down. I'm not sure exactly where I want it to sit. Then I'm using, as I mentioned, I'm using the gator board. Well, I needed some something to support that here. So I put some pieces of plywood and I just glued those to the front edge, and I think it's gonna line up pretty good there. And I think I might just glue it up to the other piece there. And I haven't decided exactly where I want this to sit. I may cut another piece of gator board to put across here, or and fill in over here, or I may, slide that way and just put something in over here. The last thing I did before I quit last night was glue the gator board in place, and you can see that now it looks pretty solid there. I'll probably go over this edge with some plaster cloth to give it an angle. And then I'm going to transition from the Woodland Scenics risers up to using plywood. Another thing I did yesterday was cut some corners out, some round pieces of plywood for the to form the base for the helix. I basically built myself a large protractor to be able to figure out my circles. Maybe if I get to doing some of that, I'll put that in the video too. All right, so let's say that I need to make a curved piece of plywood that's got a 36-inch radius on it. Well, it's kind of hard to do that, right? To figure that out, unless you have a protractor. The only problem is that you go to the hardware store, you buy a protractor. The protractors you get at the hardware store are this big. And if you want to do 36-inch radius, you need something way larger. So I built this. Now, I guess you could call this a compass. I don't know, compass protractor. Could be either one. But I've got several holes in this thing that are centered at 32, 34, 35, 36, 38, 39, 40, 42, and 44. Those are all radiuses that pivot off of this pivot point right here. Now I've also made it so I could take this screw out and move this thing way back there, and actually for this particular project where I'm just working on this little piece of plywood, I could do that. As long as you're consistent with the sides, it doesn't really matter if this is clamped down or not, but you have to make sure it doesn't move when you're ready to do this project. So if I were to take this and I'm drawing my radius on it and it ends up like this moves, then I messed that up. I have to start over. But let's say for the sake of argument, I need to do, as I was working on since I'm working on the upper helix, I'm doing one rail, or one, I'm gonna have to start this over. Since I'm working on the upper helix, I'm doing one track. And so on that, I want my overall radius to be about 37 inches. So for this, so therefore, I'm going to try to use the 38 and 36 holes because I want that track to be right in the middle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm sort of going to test fit to get the most out of this piece of plywood that I can. So I've got here, and I swing this over, and it goes all the way over there before I hit the point where I'm running out of material. So I'm in a pretty good spot, I think. I could actually like move this down, but what'll happen is I'll have to check it again when I get over there. Now it still looks pretty good. So, yeah. Okay. So, I'm gonna start here, and I'm going to take my pencil and put it in there. You got to keep the pencil in the same spot. That's the other trick of this. And draw until I get over there. And like I said, this board is heavy enough to where it's not a problem. You know, and by the way, if you're going to do this with a mechanical pencil, you want to get a mechanical pencil that is got the thicker lead on it. So I think this one's like a 0.7. And of course, you know, you can find those off Amazon, just like it seems everything else is on Amazon. Okay, so I come around the other side, and by the way, you don't have to have a module for this. I'm using the module because I happen to have it. It's handy. Works pretty good for this because it's already got a outside edge to clamp to. I've got a vertical board here and a clamp that's attached to that. Okay, so you'll notice I was making a little mark, and the reason why I was making the mark is because I was using the center of the holes to figure out where I need to end this piece. Ugh, myself to the board. Then I would take my ruler and I go between those two marks on there. You don't really need square for this. You're just going between 2 points, so any old straight ruler will work. And go ahead and mark this side too. Between those 2 points. And what I should have is a angle for the end of the board that works well to match up with another radius cut. All right, so let's move this aside. I'll flip this up so you can actually see what we've got here. You got a chunk, you can see those pencil marks that start here and go all the way over to the edge. So I've done a pretty good job, I think, of marking that. Then I would take my skill saw and cut that out. Well, I ran out of cork, so that's as far as I'm getting today. No place I can think of that I can go get some cork today anyway. So, and I've been working on this layout all day long. Well, that and that module, and some yesterday too. So I think I'm good to call it a day. Anyway, I'm going to call that it for episode 76, and hope you guys are having fun with your trains out there. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.